Hello and welcome to Conf42 Machine Learning. I'm Dmytro Hlotenko and I'm excited to have you here with me at my session. Today, I have a very special story from AWS Community DAC 2024. It's elevating event photography workflows with AWS. So I'm not holding you, let's go directly to the session. But before we begin, servus from Vienna. And I would like to mention that this is not just a technical story. This is a story about our AWS community, about technical knowledge, how technical creativity brings something interesting that let us resolve some magnificent things. And here I would like to quote that technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with the liberal arts, married with the humanities that yields the results that make our hearts sing. And this is actually the story that fully implies with this quote. And quick introduction of myself. I am Dmytro Hlotenko. I am cloud architect at UpIT. I am AWS community builder. I am AWS user group leader at Vienna and Linz, and I am together with my colleagues. We are working on AWS community in Vienna. I am a big IT geek. I love everything which is related to tech. And I'm holding master's in telecommunications, bachelor's in business management, and I'm working with AWS, full focus on AWS for the last 5 years. And I'm a big photography fan, and actually those things that we have here, that I'm IT geek, that I'm working with AWS, and that I'm a photography fan and hobbyist, so they're all collided here. This is why I have this story for you. And so in this session, we will talk about the challenge. First of all, we will take my, as I mentioned, passion for the photography, and that I wanted to make lots of magnificent pictures for our community, that we do a big job preparing AWS Community DAC with our team. And I wanted to make it memorable for us, for our speakers, for us, for sponsors, that, for example, we could back after some years and say that, yeah, so it was the thing and we have done it together. And yeah, then this is why it's actually related to the technical event, that how AWS let me achieve much more efficient workflow for the photo processing, that let us deliver the photos to our marketing team, to the speakers, to everyone involved, and to reduce the management and all the processing overhead that comes after the photo shoot. And let's also talk about the technical perspective and what kind of results does it bring. But before we go to the technical details, so some words about myself. I raised surrounded with the photography. I'm a big fan of the technical side. I really like to research. So all the technical things like sensors manufacturing, image data processing, so everything. And I also deal with the analog photography. And it's a big passion because it combines creativity, technical expertise, and it's also one field where I can express myself. So I have done photo shooting of different events such as Formula One, KTM Factory Team, and I also was photographing different AWS related events, including our community days, our user groups. So I was photographing AWS stars such as Victoria Zeman, Anton Babenko, so lots of other exciting people in our community. And of course, I also part of different exhibitions, photo festivals, and I have photographed Playboy models. Was winning competitions. So it's a pretty long way that I'm doing besides my main professional activity related to AWS. And bringing all this experience to AWS Community DAC. So I used to take over 8,000 pictures, 30 speakers, about 650 attendees. And the main challenge here, so what should I do with this amount of things? And normally, so when we are talking about the photo processing, it's a huge process because it starts from the planning of the photo shoot you are shooting. You can I make some adjustment of the amount of work you can do if you shoot properly. And since I'm a technician, for me it was the question, how can I make it more easy? And first of all, I started to research what do we have on market from the commercial solution. And since the story was about the summer of the last year, I was surprised that there are not many AI solutions, AI-powered solutions, and none of them they was capable to do what I wanted to do. And since we are builders, we love to build. So that's why I was thinking, okay, let's maybe try to do it on AWS. And so the whole process, and together with our marketing team, thank you to Susanna, Hannes, Linda, you are amazing. So we planned what, where, and how, and when we would like to have. So then my task as a photographer was to be in time and to put the thing so to capture it, that we could have an image. So for example, me with guys, we have done all the pre-planning together with the LinkedIn posts, with the text, with all the needed surrounding materials such as photos. So where and how. And we were thinking, how to use it properly to maximize the coverage for our media presence. Then, of course, my part came because I was actually performing a shooting. I was using two Sony Alpha cameras because E-mount is the best system on the market and no one can keep up with it. And those cameras, they're extremely reliable. The main camera was Sony Alpha 9 Mark III with a 70-100 G master lens, and the second camera was Alpha 7 IV with a 24-70. And I was shooting with the two cameras simultaneously to have different perspectives, but also my task was to use the technical advantages. For example, like Alpha 9, it's because of its global sensor readout, I was not afraid of the light flicker or some other things, and I was able to use both cameras in pretty aggressive setup, for example, taking high images, which is absolutely possible with the current Sony sensors, and also they have extremely reliable autofocus, and they actually saved lots of work. But still, all this gap that gets introduced by the faulty autofocus, especially on the DSLRs that are not capable to do face tracking, so it causes more and more in work. And then we are going to the point when AWS is capable to step in. So in this project, I was trying to reproduce the process that I'm doing myself. So how I'm sorting the pictures, all this cognitive process. So how basically the machine was intended to do what I would to do. And my target was to use technical opportunities by AWS to represent my way of thinking and all the photography process. And of course, also to automate the processing, to perform the automatic corrections. And here we have a full conjunction of different AWS services to perform this task. And but before I go directly to the technical solution, so in all my previous session, if you have ever attended mine, including at Conf42, so I'm always thinking that when we are building something on the AWS, we treat the data and architecture that interchangeable between humans, machines, and software. So all of those must be orchestrated together. And when I'm starting any kind of project on AWS, my goal is to achieve unity between technology and human needs. And here AWS acts as a connector between technical systems, all the software, and human requirements. And using its services, we can build it. And talking about the building, when I see some process, some application, something that runs on AWS, I always try to imagine it in a sort of the waterfall. And this is why we actually have a waterfall image. And the current set of AWS services, it deeply reminds me as Swiss Army knife, because you have lots of the services, but if you master serverless, lambdas, DynamoDB, if you know how to do the step functions, so if you do it in proper way with the CI/CD cloud formation, it's already your key to the success. And of course, with the junctions like for, I don't know, SQA, if you use SQS, if you use I don't know, Kafka, whatever you like. So you can build resilient, scalable systems that data is like a waterfall, is incoming. All this flow of the data gets processed, and you deliver your technical vision for your businesses, for your pet project. Because this project, it was not coming out from the just normally. I was thinking a lot. So for example, how to conjunction different things, how can some step of my normal cognitive process that I'm doing myself when I'm processing pictures, what function, which service can be in backend of it? And all this vision, it always comes to the orchestrated AWS services working together. And our target is, as an engineer, to interconnect them in the way to make a comprehensive solution. And basically, as I mentioned, it didn't come up from the empty place before. I even had spoken about it at Conf42 last year. So I was doing numerous variations of system integrations, of data processing, data collection from AWS, from our third-party services that we have in Apatek, and that how we can transform all this data to make it event-driven, that we could interconnect transparently for our teams, for users, for the people who are not like AWS proficient. just to normally use the system to get the data they need to make a daily job they need. And looking into this experience, for example, how I was integrating our CI/CD processes, security processes, configuration item management, inventory management, etc., image building. So it already gave me the backbone that was laid down in the foundation of this photography project. And actually, idea of it came just from a talk with my colleague because he was working with AWS Recognition for some proof of concept, and we're targeting to train them to recognize Austrian celebrities. I'm not aware myself of, unfortunately. That's why it's even tricky for AWS Recognition, but it was a use case. So I was thinking, but then I actually forgot about it because we were doing lots of preparations. It's not only about the photos, because I was also helping with the sponsorship of Community Data. I was helping with everyone. And at some point, I just started to think, okay, let's translate my AWS experience to save up lots of time for myself, for my family, even for the beers. And the result of translating my photography workflow, including the experience that I have had with AWS services before, is this. And I would call it Community Photo Factory. So the most important was to, first of all, to get the pictures. Yeah, that's why I delegated it to myself with the Sony cameras. I really love them, as I mentioned. And we gather quality files with which we can work. Then the next target was to put them somehow to AWS. And of course, we are working with S3 bucket events. We are working with a event bridge. So we are having the events that to preserve because we have to have everything processed. I put them in SQS queues, of course, with the dead letter QE. And here then we are stepping in with the two different step functions. So the processing step function that does the whole process and of the processing of the incoming files, because it takes out the metadata that we have into the file. We are performing the pre-processing based on our weights that are used to calibrate AWS recognition in this case. We have a custom written Libro Lambda, which is actually make us possible to work with the AirW files that are incoming from Sony Alpha cameras, and actually lets us to extract the data. And I developed them into different things. And we store metadata in the various DynamoDB tables. We process the pictures, we sort them based on the timestamps, information. We recognize the speaker or a kind of medium where the photo was taken, and we sort it. And also using the metadata recognized by Libro, we feed through the Bedrock Hlotenko. Then we compare it with the comparable photo samples, then we select the editing strategy, and then it gets put into the following bucket. So this is the scheme that does all the steps of the process, starting from the click of the button. It gets uploaded to AWS. We do the pre-processing of the image. We recognize what is happening. We detect faces. We get out metadata. We compare with our already known weights. We process it, and we have a picture that, for example, colleagues of mine, they could just come and take, and then we can simply share those folder with our speaker. And you can also notice the second step function metadata. And yeah, one of the evenings, I was wondering, how can I approach it? And thankfully, I have already enough archives, so I have lots of photos from the past community days, from our AWS community stage, from our user groups, and I took pictures of some of the speakers, of course, of Linda, and whatever, just to perform some testings. And interesting fact, Claude is afraid of the glasses. And for example, when you're selecting the pictures, I think it's very important to have the person with the open eyes on it. And this is the core thing. The Claude at the time 3.5, it was failing because I took some pictures of Linda, both with open and closed eyes. I gave them to the Claude with the prompt that I would like. So you're working for the professional press agency and you're picking the picture if it's suitable for the publication. And yeah, Claude was recognizing any kind of eye state at Linda, so basically open. Then I also went and I collected other people in the glasses. So Claude was failing, and it was very sad because I thought to make it in some modern way that we are delegating it to the AI model, but unfortunately it failed here. And then I actually remembered to the story with my colleague that I have already mentioned. And then I decided, okay, let's try AWS Recognition. And AWS Recognition, and it actually gave me basically just like this. I don't know what to give to you. I have this here. So that all the data that actually I would need, all the metrics, all the weights that I could process, that, for example, as far as you can see, we can have sharpness metrics, we can have exposure metrics, so we can have the different facial parameters, as you can see from the slide. And here, what I have done, I have aggregated the data based on our previous data sets for the photos I picked and I didn't pick, and it allowed me to set up the thresholds. And such a thresholds, I collected them in DynamoDB, and they were reference for the Lambda in the main processing workflow that was deciding if we are taking picture or we are not. Okay, so we have first piece of our puzzle. The second one. Thankfully, I can win an award to linking the systems which are not intended to be linked. And I don't know, I think some of those crazy Japanese engineers in Sony, they didn't expect that someone would try to throw the files through the FTP services in directly to AWS, because this is a normal approach, since in APA we have a lot of photography colleagues who are coming, they are taking pictures of sport events, different other live events, and normally, especially at sports, pictures are getting uploaded to FTP host. And I thought, okay, let's try to use this function. And AWS is offering transfer gateways that are actually have done the jobs absolutely perfectly, but thankfully, I'm community builder, and for it compensated my mistake. And you have to be extremely careful keeping the transfer family up and running, because in my case, it took over $220 just because I thought so. It has a bit more serverless approach for the pricing. So please be extremely careful. But yes, it's possible to give the transfer gateway endpoint the settings of Sony cameras and to directly stream your pictures to the S3 bucket. And when you have already the data on S3 bucket, then we are in business. We can go through that. As I already mentioned, I was collecting the metrics. And let's first of all start with the things. So for example, how I would like to work with it. Training phase involved calibration with the existing data sets. First of all, I collected pictures from meetups, I passed them through the recognition, I aggregated the data, and for me it was the most important to know if eyes are open and the picture is sharp. So those are too many things that I would personally open and come and see for the views. Also, for me, it was important to have confidence in the face detection, that we have faces, and because of the faces, we were recognizing the biggest face and the sharp face, because sometimes you have a few persons and we are trying to get it, and it can be potentially a marker of the faulty autofocus. And here we can also estimate the pose that, for example, I can automatically throw away some, I don't know, crazy facial expressions that no one would post on LinkedIn. And yeah. And basically, I was using Detect Faces API and Detect Labels API, and it was in all dedicated S3 bucket of training photos, and it was not intercepting. And I was, with the threshold analysis, I was extracting facial expressions and also raw metadata. Raw metadata was a core here that I could implement the actual processing core here. And speaking about the parameters, for me it was the most important to get the sharpness, eyes open confidence, face detection confidence parameters that we were actually storing in DynamoDB. And then when we already have the thresholds, we can already pre-warm our system to do what is it intended to do. And in the production workflow, here, as I already mentioned, we have a trigger, so we are coming, then for each individual picture, and it was extremely reliable because in any case it was processing. For the processing workflow, it does not matter what actually this picture is. It already was built to work with the ARW files that were incoming from the Sony camera. And all this process was completely orchestrated. I was extremely happy with the results. And we were extracting the metadata, as I already mentioned. So we were performing analysis with the recognition that we could get the metrics. And we were collecting the parameter thresholds. We were detecting who is actually this person. And it was automatically taking decision if it's taken or rejected. And that's why we have two separate buckets because machine can still make a mistake. So we were just to make a pre-approved and approved and unapproved approach here. And what is the most important? It's actually this custom written Libero Lambda, which is using the Pyro library. And here we just starting from the camera, we are delivering pre-sorted, completely good pictures to our team. And talking about the recognition API strategy, so I was mainly using the Decked Faces API, because I had to get the scores, as you can see on the screenshot, and I was also using the Decked Labels for the context analysis. And to reduce the price usage of recognition, I was not using index faces because we already have information about what is present, and I wanted to work just specifically with one face, and it was the most important. And we were also using the decked moderation labels as secondary filter, and just not to overwhelm the service and to avoid any kind of API throttling. We also had some dynamic calling so that we have some jitter in calls, that we are not hitting any kind of service API limits. And of course we had the Lambda concurrency here. And also what was important, for example, sometimes when I'm shooting, so I'm shooting a series of the pictures, and sometimes you can have almost similar pictures with a pretty tight timestamps. So I was sending such pictures as a batch to the recognition. So for example, because sometimes you can have 4 pictures and only one of it is sharp. And to reduce this aggregation, to reduce number of API counts, so we have taken out more efficiency from AWS Recognition. And also I used AWS Lambda Power Tools, which is an amazing tool library that gives you lots of backbone to boost your development, for example, for extensive logging, error tracing. So it's extremely useful, and you must use AWS Lambda Power Tools in your projects. And for example, here you can see an example of some piece of Lambda code I have. And so in terms of calibration of the sharpness data, it was a logarithmic function. So it was a logarithmic scale, so that goes 25 to 100 usually. And we were targeting pictures that are usually hitting over 70%. And I would say it was in 80 for the speakers and 65 for the more general photos, because they are usually have more fine-grained details that are getting lost. And for me, it's also to reinforce the quality of open eyes. So I have went through the over 500 pictures just to be confident enough, and I haven't done any additional pre-training of the recognition because it was already very reliable, and I absolutely love it. And also the Lambda was controlling, so if we actually recognizing single eye or both eyes, but it was some of the third party second priority metrics, because mainly I was getting a normal metrics for both open eyes. And also I was taking the facial expression analysis, and actually one of the ideas of development of this project that we could count the amount of happy, surprised, calm, angry to get more statistical overview of the mood and atmosphere of the conference. But we will speak about it a bit later. And post-assessment is important because we can already throw out some pictures that have some strange positions of the hands, etc., in combination with the weird face, and it already saved lots of work here. So we are getting properly exposed pictures from the set, we are having high confident eye detection, and we are already cutting down a good piece of input that could be potentially not useful in our project. And one of the peers of these projects, and I was thinking a lot what actually could have been on this slide, because I was considering different options, starting from running some EC2 instance which had a GPU with some kind of Windows script automation to perform editing. Then I was considering running any kind of commercial solution, but unfortunately only solutions by Topaz are capable to provide you CLI access, and I haven't worked with the Topaz much. That's why I abandoned this idea, because I mostly use Luminar Neo and DxO for the lab in my processing. So Luminar is amazing for portrait or studio sessions, and DxO is great when you're processing huge events like this or some, I don't know, when you don't need to tweak the faces. And then I was thinking, and I looked in the direction of the open source. things. And yeah, we have a very good known Libro library, which is used, for example, in Darktable, in the raw therapy. And I thought to give it a try. And the reason, actually, you could ask me, Dima, why do you need to do it? Because you can already have JPEGs from the camera. And this is the thing. When you are working with the raw files, you have a file which has 14 bits of information. It means that in our situation, when most of the speakers are standing behind the projectors with the bright or dark slides, and I was trying not using the flash because I didn't want to disturb attendees, not to disturb speakers, to keep everyone focused. So basically, I was a ghost. So that we keep our attendees to focus on the technical topics, to let them enjoy the conference and not to disturb them with all this, so how is sometimes called welding. And yeah, when you are shooting JPEG, you have 8-bit files and you cannot simply recover the highlights or shadows. You can, but just a bit. And here, for example, when you're working with RAW, just by working with the specific functions, you can recover all the background and have equally equalized exposed picture. So here, using the Libro library, I was also considering if I would like to run it on the ECS or run it like a Lambda. But I also noticed that if you Lambda, since we are receiving the picture, and so there is always a gap between like supplying of the pictures. Here there would be some idling time when you're running the container, and I noticed that if I was running Lambda with a capacity of memory of 1.5 gigabytes, it was giving you I was receiving much better performance than a comparable container running on the Fargate. This is the first of all. So the response time was within 10 seconds, and we already had processed image on the storage. And I'm using Amaze algorithm. There are lots of algorithms from the basic ones. So Amaze, so the idea is that it does a detection of the edges that allows you to reduce molar and also some kind of steps on the edges. And this is the most advanced algorithms which are available like in open source. And Libro, actually, this Lambda, it works in two functions based on the event it receives. The first scenario is every raw file, TNG, CR2, NEF, IRV, RAF, they have the miniature which is extracted by photo viewing software when you're coming to the raw, because sometimes it's a very like performance demanding operation to perform the mosaic. That's why camera always includes a small like preview miniature inside of the file, which is taken by the photo viewing software. And I used to extract this picture actually like to perform pre-processing on the recognition and to already save the time and costs of recognition, not to waste it processing every single image, because this resolution, it was already enough to perform the person examination. Yeah, and then we were taking the right one. Then of course we could take the bigger one and perform more precise analysis of the quality. So basically we were taking and working with more progressive options here, yeah? And also already mentioned, we have already aggregated lots of metadata, which, so basically I was telling, okay, we have this picture based on this recognition data plus metadata, and I would process it like this. And here we are pushing metadata of the sample, we are comparing it with the weights, it all goes to cloud through the bedrock, and it was suggesting the potential scenario, and it was extremely good because it was compensating the highlights very precisely. I was happy how it was adjusting the white balance, and also all my profiles, they had extremely aggressive highlight and shadow reconstruction. I was achieving with this Lambda so the quality and coloring and processing that I was not able to achieve, for example, by using the picture profile on the cameras, but mainly because of the limitations of the loss of the dynamic range on the file that is caused by 8-bit JPEG files. And yeah, this thing, it done most of the job here, because not only selection takes lots of time, the actual processing, it actually can take even more. And it's always, it must be consistent, because sometimes you can start processing one day, then I don't know, you had something, you're coming back on the next day, and then you're looking, oh my god, everything is green. No. So here it was also consistent, it was very fast, very efficient, and it's just a must-have and big win of this project. And yeah, as I already mentioned, so we were cutting the small batching logic so that I was combining the series, comparable pictures, and to reduce the number of the calls to the AWS Bedrock. And I think all these miniatures, they were around 1200 pixels. And also it was going to the step functions, they were concurrent. And I was also dynamically adjusting the concurrency based on the number of the events. And it was very parallel, and pictures were coming one by one, and they were not interacting between each other. So this is a good technical part of it. Looking here at the results, first of all, it was extremely memorable when such an amazing people like Luke, like Jan, they published all these pictures to their LinkedIns, and first of all, it's good memory for them. It's a support of their work that they are doing as speakers, as technicians, as a part of AWS community. I got lots of amazing feedback on the email, and it already gave lots of powers for me, because physically it was very exhausting to shoot such a big event. And yeah, from the AWS community side, we also we enhanced our impression and community experience, so we could use these pictures to have more community response, because we can show to the people in the good way with the cool photos what are we doing. And this is a good memory that, for example, when I will be old, and I don't know, all of us one day we will be old, unfortunately, and we could back to it and see, hey, we were cool. And for the speakers, it's also the support of their brand development, it's support of their employers. And for me personally, it was a huge win, because I spent about, I don't know, I would say maybe 15, 20 hours to get it done to work. Very relaxed, without any rush or crunch, but it saved potentially over 60 plus hours of manual work. But I believe even more, because from 8,000 pictures, the whole processing, it took out 4,200 candidates. And they were pre-processed. We were just performed additional pre-selection based on our needs that we have pre-planned with our marketing team. And talking about the costs, it's absolutely worth it, because I spent $20 on AWS Recognition. I spent $30 on AWS Lambda orchestration, DynamoDB, step function, transfer family. So if counting the price only for the day of the conference. And in total, we spent $50 and less than 1 cent per picture. This is an amazing values, just because time and, for example, my health, that my mind that I'm using to process the pictures, it's all probably would cost more than $50, definitely. And such a big response, how much effort it saves, and how it allowed us to develop the process, also to have a good reason to give a speech for you. And it was absolutely worth it, because it done job even more than for $50. And talking about the things, so that I would like to reflect to the Steve Jobs quote that I have had in the beginning, so that technology alone is not enough. And AWS, I never speak about it just like about the cloud provider. It's a toolkit that provides and let us solve the problems in the creative ways. When you're equipped with those tools, using our unique skills, you can create unexpected value. So guys, use AWS. Don't think just you are running virtual machines. Go beyond your engineering vision and make a real projects like this one that might make an impact on something significant, for example, like on AWS community. And here we have achieved a good foundation that can in the future can be developed in automatic collection, generation, and delivery platform for any kind of event. For example, for publishing, for real-time events that, for example, people, they are on the event, they can scan QR code and come and see it. But we have a technical backbone, and for me, the task would be to have even more for it. So to make not only at the point when you can come and take it, but to make it in the way that pictures are coming to you. So, looking to the takeaways from all of this story, first of all, so AWS services, they are amazing, and they can be combined creatively beyond traditional use case, so for what they are intended to do, and combining with the things that are intended to do something else, but for some reason they're useful, and we have it here. For example, that FTP function streams directly to S3 bucket and let us work with the data. And I have combined here recognition step function, Lambda, S3, Bedrock in the way that actually they were not like designed for, and it's just knowledge and seeing beyond the intended use of AWS service. And they are all the services, they're versatile building blocks that can solve any problem in any domain. You just come and solve it. And I think it's not a regular case when AWS services in that matter, they are solving photography tasks in the way like a human would work with the same photo data set. Yeah. And this project also shows why serverless is amazing, and you can delegate to labor intensive tasks without of any management overhead. You just coming and creating the logics that brings economical, strategical business value to you. And all this orchestration, it turned hours of manual work to the amazing thing. And since we pay only for use, it's also very economical, effective. And so, yeah, if you have some projects with such behavior, feel free to continue with it, and it will solve your tasks. Yeah. And the most important, all this technical part, it allowed us to develop human connections and make us a good memory of the conference that we have done all together. Yeah, this is what about was it. So thank you very much. I'm always happy to discuss anything technical, AWS, whatever you like, even Formula One. Please come to me or add me on LinkedIn, please. So I'm open for any kind of discussions. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy Conf42. I'm very thankful to the Mark for having all this idea, pushing all this community, and this is the second time this year, and I'm excited to be here in support of you. So please enjoy the conference. I hope you like the session, and we will see us any other time on the clouds. Thank you.